Swan Lake theme cranking here. Can you hear it at all?
Yes, there it is.
Ah. Okay, we'll sit here for just a few minutes while people are filing into the virtual theater.
Okay.
Okay, well, we've already got 3 or 4 comments. Okay, so people are starting to file in. All right, I think we can go ahead and get started. I always try to give it a minute just to make sure it's working. And sometimes I never know. Today is a very special episode of Hollywood Kitchen. I am so excited about it. We're kicking off the Halloween season, which is the greatest time of the year for me. And I know a lot of my fellow monster kids out there. And today, I am so excited to welcome as my special guest, David J. Skal, who is a world expert on Dracula, classic Hollywood horror, and has the new book, Fright Favorites, 31 Films to Haunt Your Halloween and Beyond. Currently available in bookstores and online. Mr. Skal, thank you so much for joining me today.
Well, thank you, and especially for the special tribute you've arranged. Couldn't be better for me. My favorite monster, Dracula, Bela Lugosi.
Me too. He's the reason that it changed my life. I saw Dracula on television when I was about 6, and that began my love of film, of classic Hollywood. I grew up to go to film school. I've been the tour guide at Hollywood Forever for over 18 years. Like, it kind of everything started with Bela, really. I think a lot
you should try to have Bela move from Holy Cross over to Hollywood Forever. I think he'd get much more traffic over there.
Yeah,
it's much fitting kind of place.
Pardon?
It's a much more fitting cemetery with, especially with the way they do up Halloween and Day of the Dead.
Yeah, I do visit him at Holy Cross whenever I can and go leave him roses and visit him and everything. So I do love to pay tribute. And today, Mr. Skal is going to teach me how to make Bela Lugosi stuffed cabbage rolls, which was apparently one of his most favorite things to eat. This recipe comes to me not from one of my vintage cookbooks, but this really cool cookbook I found on the internet. It used Scrumpy, and it's called It Came From the Kitchen, and it's recipes of horror and science fiction stars. But the recipe in here is a little daunting to me and also looks like it would feed an army. So Mr. Skal is going to kind of guide me into making a more scaled down version of the cabbage rolls. And eventually I will be posting it on my new blog about my little Hollywood Kitchen project. So stay tuned for more on that. But I think we're going to be able to make a lovely culinary tribute to Bela today.
Okay, of course, I would have been delighted to come on with you for any reason, but when you told me that Bela's favorite dish was stuffed cabbage rolls, I said, I've got to do this because my family is Eastern European on both sides as well, and stuffed cabbage has always been a staple comfort food, and I really grew up with it, and I've learned to make it myself, probably somewhat different than the recipe you're using, but there are many different ways to make this. Stuffed cabbage and stuffed peppers are very popular dishes all across Eastern and Central Europe. And Bela's sounds really yummy, but what are the basic substitutions that you're going to make?
Well, in Bela's recipe, there's a tremendous, well, first off, it makes for a huge amount of people, and I've just got myself to cook for it. But also it calls for a ton of pork and whole eggs, which I do have some in the other room I could go get from the fridge if we need them. Also, R-O-U-X. I'm not sure how you pronounce that. Roux?
Roux.
Roux. Okay.
Same thing as in Cajun cooking. the light kind of flour gravy that's used as a base. Yeah, there are so many ways to do it. You can't go wrong with this dish. And I'm one of these people. I substitute and I experiment like crazy, in the
Good.
kitchen.
I feel that way too.
And I've always, and in recent years, because of the sad state of my arteries, I've been switching over to low-fat vegan whenever I can do it. And you can even do that with it. Now you're going to do a meat-based recipe. As we go, I will tell people ways to cut the fat, but none of the flavor. And I think this is going to be a lot of fun.
I do too. Before we get started on the meal, tell me how you first, I've seen it in interviews, but tell our audience how you first discovered Dracula and your gateway drug into being a monster kid.
Well, I was a member of that first legendary generation of fans. We call ourselves Monster Kids. We're denizens of the 1960s, late 50s and early 60s, when the Universal horror classics were being released to television for the very first time, and finding a whole new audience, a whole new generation. And there were fan clubs, and there were the Monster magazine. And I promised you I'd have some show and tell here. So, and there were the wonderful Aurora model kits. And here is my original, there we are. Here's my original assemblage of Boris Karloff as Frankenstein. My Dracula has not survived, but I have another Dracula curio over here that I'll show you. But the thing is, in those days, there was no video on demand. Movies were a special occasion. I mean, you had to wait until a television station was going to show it to you, or maybe a local revival house might rarely screen one of these things. But you had to approach it virtually, kind of in the same way we're approaching Halloween this year. Nothing's direct and in person. But with the magazines like Famous Monsters of Filmland, kind of the house organ of monster kid culture, was edited by this eccentric and wonderful man named Forrest J. Ackerman. And he was kind of this avuncular Pied Piper of monsterdom, and he shepherded us all into an appreciation of these things. And we couldn't watch them anytime we wanted, but he would provide all the photos and the stories, and you could relive and access these films, in that way. And some of us, even made our own versions of Dracula and Frankenstein in the backyard with our 8mm cameras. And some of us turned into Steven Spielberg. Not all of us, but it was a fun time, and it's really been a shaping force in many people's lives. A lot of us haven't become major directors or anything like that, but we've had interesting careers in the industry, around the industry. And we were really one of the first generations to take media into our own hands. And at the time, I could only dream of something like this. It's just astonishing how much we have at our fingertips now. And so this year I did Fright Favorites, featuring Dracula and Frankenstein, many of the early classics, not with any anticipation that we were going to basically be canceling Halloween and everything was going to have to be virtual. And but my book seems to have accidentally served a purpose. It has a countdown format, 31 movies to haunt your Halloween and beyond. And turns out that 31 was not quite enough. So I kind of hedged it by adding to each film if you enjoyed this, you might also enjoy this. So it's really celebrating 62 films for the entire month of October. And they are all available very easily from your favorite streaming services or Netflix or on DVD. And I'm sure a lot of my readers already have copies they're going to bring out and perhaps share with with their children. This tends to be a generational gift. Not all parents are successful in convincing their kids of the importance and enduring impact of monsters, but a lot of us give it a try, and I've watched with delight as youngsters discover these creatures for the very first time, and their responses aren't always what you'd expect. I've taught courses based on my books at a number of colleges and done a lot of guest lecturing, and the students I'm talking to, they are so young at this point that none of them even have a memory of the Francis Coppola Dracula in 1992, much less Lugosi and Todd Browning in 1931. And many of them are experiencing black and white movies, for the first time, or as an extreme kind of novelty. And I taught the Monster Show at Trinity College, Dublin, a few years ago, and my class was primarily women, and we were talking about the appeal of the Dracula character, the Lugosi incarnation, and I said, there's this story that Lugosi was quite a ladies' man in real life and on screen, that women found him a very romantic character, and so let me just ask you, ladies, what do you think? Is Lugosi's Dracula as a sexy character? And to a woman, they all just kind of rolled their eyes and said, "Oh no, Frank Langella was sexy, Gary Oldman was sexy, but Lugosi's appeal, they found him fascinating. He is a singular kind of character, but he doesn't quite match modern conceptions of what a romantic screen character is like. But he had that hypnotic that stare, alone. We think of his voice immediately, but Dracula, like Frankenstein, was in many ways a silent film performance. It was right there. Both these films, Dracula and Frankenstein, came out at the dawn of talkies, and they were pitched to audiences who were discovering sound on screen, but were also completely used to silence. And both of these characters, I don't think, would be as effective and would have stayed in our imaginations as long as they have had they been more voluble. They are both pantomime performances, and Lugosi has some memorable dialogue, but not a lot of it. His greatest moments are those moments where he's just standing still and then staring at you. And I've talked to people who actually saw him on stage doing the part, and he used the stillness and the silence of his presence to bring the thing over. He would just be stock still, and then at one moment, as Lucy rose in a trance to approach him across the bedroom, one eyebrow would just shoot up, and that was it. He didn't have to do a lot. Karloff and Lugosi, they were both such wonderful visual, presences. They didn't have to do a lot with their craft. Some will say Bela, went over the top much more often than Karloff did, but a little bit with the horror stars goes a long way. But they've been, I felt like they're, pals my entire life, and we monster kids weren't frightened of these things when they came out, but I was surprised when I started doing my first, historical survey, the Monster Show, that there was something I'd totally forgotten about that scared the pants off of me at the time I was discovering monsters, and that was the Cold War and the Cuban Missile Crisis. It was during the missile crisis that I first discovered these Aurora models, and they were just something I absolutely had to have. They were, I think, what are these monsters? There are things that cannot die. And Dracula certainly could just stare down the atomic bomb. And so I think that was, always percolating under the surface. We think of monsters as nostalgically, as escapist entertainment, and they are that, and they are, they do have a rosy glow about them, and at least for us diehard fans. But they spoke to something else. We like to look at. We have to process all of these terrible anxieties in our culture, and I love that Turner Classic Movies, who are the publisher of Fright Favorites, their promos for this month are, this year already feels like a horror movie, and it sure does. And I thought that was just kind of brilliant. And but there's more to monsters than meets the eye. I think they're kind of a secret history, of the 20th century, and now the 21st. At least they embody a secret history if you're interested and want to go digging for it.
I agree. I think more than probably any other genre, they have a way of reflecting what's going on. Like in the Kevin Brownlow documentary, you talk about how Lon Chaney in the films of disfigurement he made with Todd Browning sort of reflected the horrors of World War One.
Oh yeah. The World War One was considered to be the war to end all wars, and the mechanization of the destruction and killing just combined with the medical technology that had also been developing apace, made it possible for men who would have died instantly in previous conflicts to survive and have to be reintegrated into society with all of their disabilities and disfigurements. And it was an uneasy process. People did not want to look too directly at what the war had wrought, in America and in Europe. Those original expressionist horror films in Germany, like The Cabinet of Dr. Caligari and Nosferatu, they weren't Saturday matinee entertainment. They were self-conscious art films, and they had strong social messages, about the war that had just passed. And in Caligari, you have this madman who, an authoritarian figure who sends forth his sleepwalker, his soldier, to kill and be killed. And this was meant to represent the plight of all the millions of men who lost their lives in a war that a lot of people didn't think was worth fighting. And Nosferatu is presented as not only as a symbol of the war, and this was in the publicity for the films. It wasn't, something us critics are bringing to it decades later. The publicity for Nosferatu called the First World War, the cosmic vampire that drained the lifeblood of Europe. And Nosferatu also brought the plague. And now is a good time to remember that World War I also coincided with the second catastrophe of the Spanish flu epidemic. And so it's all kind of, all of these cultural calamities are baked right into the beginning of horror movies. And in America, we didn't want to look at the people, coming back, the crippled and maimed and disfigured veterans. There was in one of Busby Berkeley's his first Gold Diggers film, there is that wonderful song that Joan Blondell sings, you know, My Forgotten
Man.
Yeah. Remember my forgotten man, put a rifle in his hand. We shouted, hip hooray, we sent him on his way. Where is he today? And a lot of him were kind of the prototypes for some of the horrific makeups, you know, that Lon Chaney, perhaps not completely consciously, modeled his face. But it was, you know, plastic surgery really got its biggest boost in the 20th century right after World War I, because of all of the facial disfigurements, and so it's not surprising that frightening movie makeups also got their biggest boost, you know, from Lon Chaney and others around the same time.
I was so lucky. I got to see the My Forgotten Man and the Gold Diggers movie at the UCLA Film Archive in 35 millimeter, like the year before the pandemic or so. And that's just, seeing that on a giant screen like that was so, so powerful.
Well, this is America's perhaps favorite forgotten man of the time. When I was fortunate enough to be able to work on the film Gods and Monsters with Ian McKellen, and I did the behind the scenes documentary, and he made the observation about Karloff's monster that he really is kind of a shell-shocked character, the embodiment of World War I shell shock, just completely abandoned and left adrift, misunderstood, and marginalized, and so that's the end of the lecture on that. But there's just these icons, and these movies are much richer than they were always dismissed. You know, in your standard Hollywood history books, it wasn't until like the 1970s and 80s that you could count on finding films like Dracula and Frankenstein and names like James Whale and Todd Browning in the indexes. They were considered, you know, kind of beneath contempt. And but now monsters have kind of had their revenge. They've moved from the periphery to the center of what makes Hollywood work. And there's hardly a blockbuster these days. Almost every big summer blockbuster has some aspect of the fantastic or the monstrous, or special effects or creatures, and you know, the imagination. This imaginative aspect of filmmaking was kind of dormant in the silent era in America, whereas Europe gave it full reign from the very beginning. But there were scary characters in the silent films of the United States, but not supernatural monsters, nothing fantastic. Everything had to have a logical explanation and be explained away, you know, and it was usually the machinations of some criminal, a plot to embezzle an inheritance or commit some other crime. And so the studios, when they started considering Dracula, because it was such a big success on stage, they worried about audiences even buying the premise. Both these films, Dracula and Frankenstein, came out the worst year of the Great Depression in 1931. And they first, Dracula astonished everybody by being one of the big moneymakers, you know, for Universal. Combined with Frankenstein, you know, they're often regarded as having saved the studio from insolvency. All of the studios were just kind of tottering on the brink, and somehow they were what America was waiting for. These twin images of dread and anxiety. They were like lightning rods for all of the free-floating anxieties in the culture. There was no social safety nets back then. it really seemed like the end of the world to a lot of people. It's hard to overestimate or overdescribe how challenging and terrifying a time this was for people. And I don't think our favorite monsters would have had the staying power in popular culture had they been introduced, you know, in a happier or more stable time.
I agree. There's so much power in those movies. Anytime I can see them on the big screen, I know that's not possible now, but whenever I've been lucky enough to do that, it's even more powerful than seeing them on TV, just because seeing that image writ large on actual film on a huge screen is just mind-blowing to me.
Yeah, I was lucky enough to see these films when I finally did catch up with them in a theater in new 35 millimeter prints in 1968. I had waited a long time. You know, I think the magazines kind of, you know, kept me going because Cleveland television wasn't showing the Universal classics, you know, for a period of, you know, about 8 years in the early 60s. And so I had to make do with virtual monsters. And now, of course, they're really easy to come by. And I actually hosted with Dave Karger on Turner Classic Movies the other night, 4 of my favorite you know, films from 4 decades, and they were just beautifully restored and preserved. I don't think I've seen Dracula in such a beautiful television print before, and because it was difficult for Universal to restore it because it had been such a popular film over the years that the original camera negative had just been worn to dust, you know, by endless printing of copies of the film, and so they had to use a lot of digital wizardry and did quite a wonderful job of it. How are you doing over there? I'm only seeing my.
Excuse me, I had something in my throat.
Okay, where are you in the recipe process?
Okay, I've just not even gotten started yet. So when we were instant messaging about this, you mentioned lining the pan with sauerkraut. So I did that. I've got a baking pan that I put sauerkraut in the bottom of.
Yeah, a thin layer of sauerkraut. You might even pour a little bit of tomato sauce, or tomato soup is something that's very frequently used, you know, as a binder in the to top it. But yeah, in the Hungarian versions of the recipe, especially sauerkraut is always part of the deal.
All right, so I've got a thin layer of the sauerkraut in the bottom of the baking pan. I've got a layer of tomato soup here. So next, do I combine all of the ingredients in a bowl? Is that kind of the next step to making these?
To make the meat, sure, you'd put your ground beef or your ground pork or your ground combination of beef, pork, and sausage, or the way I tend to do it, using you know, textured vegetable protein, you know, highly seasoned, you know, as a meat substitute. They all work. You can, I guess the recipe you had said to, you know, whip in an egg into the meat. That certainly works, and it works as a binder, you know, in the same way that like making meatloaf. What you're doing, you're making kind of small meatloafs or elongated meatballs to put into the cabbage rolls, and yeah, it's worth experimenting with these things. You really cannot make a mistake with this kind of a dish. It always ends up comforting, no matter what you substitute or what shortcuts you may
that
take.
Is so good to know, because my attempts at making Anne Dvorak's Jello salad were a complete debacle. So I'm glad to know I can't mess this one up.
Okay. No, you can't. I promise you will not. It's going to be good. The thing is to make sure you don't make the meat mixture too soupy. Just add enough that you can mold it, you know, by hand, as if you were making a hamburger patty or a meatball or something like that.
Should I go and add an egg to this, or does it leave the egg?
Sure. If you, how much meat are you using? A pound?
Oh, I don't know where the label is for this. I'm making it just for, a small batch for myself. So just more or less one packet of.
Yeah, well, you would not go wrong, cracking an egg into it and mixing it all up.
I'll be right back. I'll go get one.
Okay.
I live in a 1920s apartment, and my refrigerator is actually in a utility room down the hall from my kitchen. So sometimes when I have to grab stuff, I have to dart down the hall.
So usually, at the very minimum, you would have, the egg or something tomatoey, or chopped onion, diced onions. You definitely have some rice in there, and you can use pre-cooked rice or even, microwavable rice.
Lots of pre-cooked rice.
And so put a nice, handful of that into your into your bowl, and keep mixing. If you have spices at this point, garlic, powdered garlic, paprika, definitely Hungarian, and you can't go wrong.
Last night when I went to the grocery store to prepare, I saw 3 different kinds of paprika, and one of them said hot Hungarian paprika, and I was like, that's the one I need to get.
Yes, well, that's the one I'm sure Bela liked, as well. But there are sweeter paprikas. There are spicier versions. But the spicy Hungarian is what I have in my pantry as well.
So I've got the meat, the egg, the cooked rice, the paprika.
Other things to consider with your filling are finely diced mushrooms, which a juiciness to it that if you're going with the meat substitute route, you might want to especially add something like mushroom to soften it up a bit, and it will feel a little bit more like real meat. I guess you could use they have those Beyond Burger kind of products now in both patties and as ground form. I'm sure they would work just perfectly. They have a lot of fat in them, though. If you're trying to cut down on the fat, I'd stick to the vegetable protein. And but the tastes can come from anywhere. In addition to paprika, diced peppers are a nice complement to the onions, and there's a wonderful, very 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 spicy Hungarian green pepper. It's a long pepper, and it's you can substitute our Anaheim peppers very very well here for that. So that's something to think about. I know I'm throwing all these ideas at you, and you have to make dish more than once, and
Yes.
never make it the same way.
This is awesome garlic. I don't have a garlic press right now. I need to get one, but I did chop up a few cloves of garlic.
That'll definitely do it.
Which seems funny because vampires really don't like garlic, right? So.
That's right. In the original British stage version of Dracula, there is a line where after someone waves a bunch of garlic at Dracula's face, he cringes, and they say, "Well, Count Dracula," and he says, "Forgive me, I lived too long in Italy to care for the taste or the smell of garlic." And he was. I'm not sure where that really come from. There are many explanations. Garlic does have a long history as a folk remedy, a blood purifier. In fact, going back to really ancient times, and that is probably where it was. Its use against vampires was appropriated.
My bucket travel list is so incredibly long, but I really want to go and see like the Dracula castle and see things that I can, anything having to do with it that I can see.
Well, you know, Bram Stoker never went to Transylvania or Romania. He did all of his research in the library. So but there are wonderful, there's still wonderful Dracula places to go to. In Romania, there is a castle that's, it's so picturesque. It's not Dracula's castle. The historical Dracula apparently stayed there once, but it's called Bran Castle, and it's like something out of a fairy tale. It's just a beautiful, beautiful thing, and you find it endlessly identified as Dracula's castle. And I believe, you know, the tourist industry over there doesn't do a lot to disabuse you. But there are many. I did a travel piece for the New York Times a while ago called Dracula's English Haunts, and kind of a guided tour to all of the locations in England and Ireland where you could encounter some of Stoker's inspirations for, you know, for Dracula. The most amazing and kind of visual knockout is Whitby up in North Yorkshire, where Stoker himself holidayed in the summers. He'd go up there every August, and he did a lot of research in the Whitby Library. And there's this magnificent old ruin of an abbey, Whitby Abbey, that it's directly featured in the film. Dracula makes his first entrance into England through Whitby Harbor, driving a ship in a storm. And Whitby looks the way it did in 1897. It's just amazing. It's like getting into a time machine. And I put that first on anybody's list. They have a big goth festival up there every Halloween. And it's the kind of thing I'm usually traveling in October of every year with my various books and, you know, my college lectures, and it's the only time I get to, you know, really meet fans in person. I get to come out of my crypt, you know, once a year. And but this year, no. But I will be participating virtually at the Whitby Goth Festival in a few weeks. And I've only been there once, and I really like to go back and just suck up that atmosphere. It's really amazing. I mean, it's the definition of, I mean, you have the abbey itself is perched with a cemetery on this cliff overlooking the Whitby Harbor, and it's just there's a commemorative bench on the other side of the harbor on the hill called the Bram Stoker's Seat, and from that location you can see, and it's right out in front of the guest house where Stoker and his family would stay when he visited. You can see all of the major locations that he uses in the story. And he kind of has to compress it because Mina is able to make out details all the way across the harbor and the cliff that she would really need, you know, the Mount Palomar telescope to deal with. But we can give Stoker that bit of license, and it's all there. It's just waiting for Dracula fans.
Is this Goth Festival something that we could do online, like myself and other people watching?
There, yes, I can. I forget exactly the venue I'm going to be appearing on, but I'll pass the information on to you. It's going to be a virtual event this year, completely. Although it's people there, and there's a big costume competition, and a music festival, and film festival, and I've been to the Bram Stoker Festival in Dublin, where Stoker grew up. And this has become a wonderful event there year after year. I was a special guest there a few years ago when my Stoker biography came out, and had just a great time. The whole town just embraces everything Dracula-like or Stoker-like at that time. And Stoker really, he's now as recognized in Dublin as some of the previous luminaries like James Joyce and Bernard Shaw, who were contemporaries of his or near contemporaries. And now you see Stoker's name appearing on the mugs you can buy at Trinity College Dublin, where it was his alma mater, and where I had the privilege to teach a course. Stoker and other Gothic greats. Dublin is just one of my favorite cities in the world. It's like a more accessible combination of West End London and Back Bay Boston. Two other places that are not too bad to visit.
Very cool. Well, I think we've all got a lot of bucket list travel ideas from you, for sure. And I will post that New York Times article too to my Facebook page so people can take a look. Now that I've got the mixture, I've never done this before. Do I put it in the middle of the cabbage?
Have you cooked the cabbage already?
I cooked the cabbage. I boiled it before we got on Zoom today. Okay.
And I can't see what you're doing because I'm still the only thing on screen. Could you split the screen so we both show?
Let me see here. I'm not sure I'd have to get up and go around. This kitchen is really.
Let me see if I can do it here. No, I don't seem to be able to control it. Okay, but I can in my mind's eye, I know what you're doing.
Okay. Well, I think I put it.
As I told you yesterday, the way I used to, just take a big cabbage and put it in a big pot and, boil it whole until it softened. It's actually a lot easier, but then you have to wait for it to cool off before you can handle it. What I do these days is I just slice off the bottom, the root part, and then cut a notch in the thick part that remains. So you have something that's completely flexible, and you can roll up the meat in. Depending on, get the biggest leaves you can, and sometimes it means not using the entire cabbage, so that just the outer ones work better. But the trick here is to not get too worried about the precise manner in which you fold it all up. I use toothpicks. I'm sure there's a way to, roll them up like you're tightly making a bed and let it all hold together. But I have no trouble cheating with a couple of the toothpicks to hold them together, and that works just fine.
What I'm going to do here, okay, I've rolled it up. Got the toothpicks. Driving the stake through the heart of the.
Yes, that's a way to look at it. Okay,
this is how the first one looks. You see that?
No, I can't see anything. I told you that.
Shoot, I'll have to send you pictures after it's over of how it turns out here.
Well, you'll have this posted so I can actually come back and watch it, right?
Oh, definitely. Now, what temperature and cooking time do you use? Because I know a lot of different recipes suggest different things. So what do you recommend?
What's your what does the recipe you have at hand suggest? It depends how fast. You're using cooked rice, right?
I am using already cooked rice. Yes. Okay,
so we don't have to worry about the rice cooking. So that can speed up the time a bit. 375 to 400. That's kind of the range. And I'd check on it. I think you have to 375 for an hour, 400 for 45 minutes would probably be what you need to make sure the meat is cooked through.
Okay. Well, I'm gonna cook it after, put it in the oven like after the show, and then later I'll post pictures of how it turned out.
Perfect.
My kitchen's pretty small, so if I use the oven, the entire kitchen is 375. So when I use the oven, I like to kind of go out for a bit or do something else.
Yeah, these days in LA, we have to use the AC whenever we use the oven.
One thing that's kind of been fun about making some of these star recipes is kind of incorporating the star's roots, be it Marlene Dietrich from Germany. We had a German potato salad episode, or it's also kind of, it just is kind of telling or interesting about them, about their lives, what they liked, why they liked it. It's kind of fun, a fun way to look at a celebrity, you know, from old Hollywood.
And then you have a choice at the end. I usually cover the dish with foil, and maybe pull it off the last 15 minutes or so, just so things aren't too moist. But the final topping you do once you have the rolls in the dish would be to spoon over some more of your tomato sauce or your tomato soup, and another sprinkling of the sauerkraut, and also, if you want, sprinkle on a small handful of caraway seeds.
What do the caraway seeds add to the taste? I've never tried those before.
They add the taste of caraway seeds, a kind of a bread. It just goes very, very well. And I'm not quite sure how to describe the taste, but it's a nice compliment. It's better if you put it on before you cook it. You could certainly toast caraway seeds and sprinkle them on, at the end with your sour cream or your sour cream substitute that we'll talk about.
Well, I heard since Bela liked to eat them with sour cream, I do have some sour cream in the fridge ready to go when these.
There are a lot of different ways to get around that high fat content and that animal product, the animal product issues. There are many kinds of vegan sour cream substitutes. You can very easily Google a recipe. A lot of them are made with silken tofu that you just put into a blender with some lemon juice and a few other items. There is regular low-fat, sour cream. There is you can use, if you're still okay with animal products but want to cut out the fat, you can use Greek non-fat plain yogurt with some lemon juice added to it, and it comes out remarkably, like sour cream. And this is a great topping for chili too.
Okay. So I put a little layer of sauerkraut on top of the lettuce rolls, and then for those watching, this is what it looks like right now. Okay, and then did you say I pour a little tomato sauce on top of it as a binding agent?
Yeah, no, you can put it into the meat mixture, as a binding agent. But the tomatoes, just a drizzle of the sauce on top of the sauerkraut and the rolls, and then put the foil on it, and it's time to roll.
Nice. Well, I want to talk more about your book. One of the things I really like about it is that doing my cemetery tour that I do, I come across a lot of people who love this stuff very much, like I do and you do. But then I also come across a lot of young people who know absolutely nothing about it, but they have a curiosity. And what's so great about this book is it really works for both audiences, for people that live for this stuff, but also people that are new to it and kind of want to dive in. And if they dive in,
yeah. Well, we took that into consideration when we picked the films to be covered. Turner, they know what their demographic is, and it is split between diehard old time movie buffs and people who are discovering these things for the first time, and it seems to have hit that audience. I'm getting a tremendous amount of fan mail on it. In the 4 weeks it's been available, and people are just saying this is the perfect introduction, or I know the person who I'm going to give this to, for Christmas, and I do encourage people to give it out as a gift. As Tim Burton reminded us, Halloween is essentially just an early excuse for Christmas. So maybe Halloween will be a gift-giving holiday in and of itself, but we changed the title of the book from Halloween Favorites to Fright Favorites, 31 movies to haunt your Halloween and beyond, to give it more of a shelf life. And I think that was a smart marketing decision from them. But people are endlessly fascinated with these films. And, I've now been writing for multiple generations of people and readers who have no concept of these films at all. I sometimes get a little tired about being asked to please write something else about the 1931 Dracula, and I somehow find a way to do it. But I'm a little jaded, but it's nice being exposed to fans who are really discovering this stuff, for the first time. And it's I get I get variation on one letter a lot, and that's that thank you. You've nobody I got made fun of for my interest in monsters when I was growing up, or my parents threw out my monster magazines, or or the teachers thought I was crazy. But you've validated my my interest in this, and thank you. And I'm just very I'm very grateful and touched, to hear that from folks. Monsters bind us all together, like the like the egg in the filling.
yes. And I will put these in the oven, and later on I will post about it and pictures and how it turned out. I agree. I mean, I'm really lucky that as a kid, when I told my parents I love this stuff, they took me to the library and they got me whatever books were available at that time on these monsters. And I'm so grateful that they didn't see me as a weird kid, but they supported me, and I'm grateful for that. And I'm so grateful for your work. I've been a fan of your work for a long time, so I'm really, really, I want to plug some of your other books in addition to Fright Favorites. And I do want to mention, of course, you can get them at the TCM shop, but Larry Edmonds in Hollywood, Vroman's in Pasadena, a lot of local booksellers are struggling so badly during this pandemic. So
yeah, it's easy to go to the big online stores, but you can't get an autographed copy that way. So I've designated Dark Delicacies in Burbank, California, as the go-to place for personally signed copies, and I've been making repeated trips out there every week. I mean, I've signed like over 100 books there so far, which in any other year would just be astonishing. But people don't have the chance to line up and say hello. But Dark Delicacies will take your order and your inscription information, or the information about your giftee you would like it to be signed to, and Sometimes I even draw little pictures in the in the margin. I'm pretty good at bats and pumpkins.
You know what you wrote in my Todd Browning book? I had you sign my Todd Browning biography at the Silent Movie Theater a long, long time ago. Because I'm a Haney and Browning fan. And I can't talk. The inscription thrilled me so much because you wrote to Carrie, one of us, one of us.
One, we accept you, one of us.
October 27th, 2001. So.
Wow. Yeah, a brand new edition, massively expanded edition of Dark Carnival will be out early in the year from Centipede Press in Colorado. Wonderful producer of limited edition art museum quality books, and it's been a kind of a labor of love that's taken way too many years, but I think it's going to be worth having if you're one of those people who has to, and it's going to be limited. I think it's going to be 1,000 copies numbered, and that will be that. But it will have photos you've never seen. I was able to get access to Todd Browning's personal scrapbooks and his personal photo collection, and there are just wonderful discoveries in it, and it's a very, very extravagant book, and I can't wait to see it. I haven't seen the final the slipcase illustration, but a wonderful illustrator has been hired to do it. I won't give away any more information. I have to dole this information out, in drips and drabs over the next several months. But Todd's interesting. I wasn't able to crack all of his secrets. He was an ornery kind of character who never wanted to share too much of his inner world. And I hope I've cracked open as much as anyone can.
I think you did. I've read that book, and I think you did. Absolutely.
Wait till you see the new stuff.
Oh God! Can you post the second it is available so I can click and order?
You will have. Just follow me on Facebook, and I'm relaunching my dormant website, monstershow.net, where a lot of this stuff is going to be available. I'm going to have links to these videos, and I'm producing original video commentary all this month. I was only on Turner Classic Movies live for this past Friday, but you will be able to find me on screen talking endlessly about these movies and everything they mean right through Halloween.
Perfect. I think that is going to be such a gift to me and all of the horror fans out there in the world. I also want to plug 2 of your other books I have, also musts for people that love this genre. That is The Monster Show and Hollywood Gothic. And I have the earlier edition, I believe.
Yeah, the thing is with my books, I beat the bushes for research and think I've covered everything. And then as soon as the book's out, people start coming out of the woodwork with, "Oh, I loved your book. And did you know about this?" Or "I have this special knowledge of this person or that person," or some hitherto, unknown fact. So I'm always revising and updating the films. I mean, my books, they're unusual because they've stayed in print so long.
The monsters, they
unusual because they stayed alive so long. I mean, Hollywood Gothic and The Monster Show, their Gothic has now been in print without a break for 30 years. The Monster Show is coming up on its 30th anniversary, and they've been translated all over the world. And it's really not too many people have done this. I'm not really beating my own drum here, but I think I do something special is that I talk not just to one audience. I've got a big following, in academia, but I'm not an academic. I seem to play one well on TV. And I get a lot of fan mail, dear doctor, or dear professor. But I avoid sounding like an academic. I avoid using academic jargon and academic critical theory. And my original training as a writer was as a fiction writer and novelist. And I use a lot of anecdote, and I use a lot of characterization in my books, because behind all of these wonderful monsters are even more wonderful individuals, often driven and obsessive and quirky, and their stories are worth knowing too. So it's all storytelling, movies, movie history. We are story making creatures. We spend half of our waking lives telling ourselves stories of ourselves, our own narration. We all have our own narration, our own saga that we keep revising and telling. But if that's that is probably the secret. These monsters are they're iconic, they're mythic. They get down to the very, very roots of narrative. And I think Stoker wrote Dracula after the idea of the vampire had been bandied around in oral folklore for forever, and Stoker kind of fixed it in the written word briefly, because soon again these folkloric energies took over, and as soon as they started adapting it for the theater or for motion pictures, just as in folklore, every adapter, every reteller adds something new, makes it their own in some special way. And so I've stopped complaining that nobody has ever given Bram Stoker his due and done a really definitive adaptation. That's really beside the point. These monsters stay alive in their variations. They mutate, they adapt, they survive. That's how they stay immortal, not by remaining static things. And Stoker wouldn't probably recognize this idea of Count Dracula. I don't have my Aurora model, but this is a replica from an original that Lugosi himself had sculpted and gave out to people as gifts. And it's really quite a nice little. It really does look like him. Sometimes I've seen copies of this that are just too heavily painted and stop looking like Lugosi at all. But this is really quite wonderful. And I believe it was a member of his family or his wife's family who was the original sculptor. But this is up there on my knickknack shelf with a few other things. I had all the models when I was a kid. Only a few remain these centuries later. But that's because my mother took good care of them, tucked them away in the attic, and they were there for me to come back to as an adult and enjoy again.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much. I could listen to you for hours on end. This is just riveting.
Well, come up with some other horror star recipes, and I'll be happy to come back. This is a lot of fun.
Well, I'd love to, if we could get Sarah Karloff and redo the Karloff guacamole. I have 2 first editions of Vincent Price cookbooks in the other room. So there's no shortage of content, and I would love to do more. Absolutely.
All these, yes, no matter how horrifying these actors were on screen, they all had to stop to eat.
Oh, absolutely true.
So you could, I think they'd all be wonderful people to actually, have a meal with. Indeed, I've had meals with the families, which has been a lot of fun. Back when I was doing the A&E biography segments on Karloff, Lugosi, and Cheney, we all ended up together at Universal Orlando, and as guests of the studio, and they gave us all a per diem allowance. And the last night we were in this wonderful 5-star restaurant at a place called the Peabody Hotel, which is famous for being the place where they have a special enclosure for ducks on the roof, and they come down in an elevator every day at a certain time and walk a red carpet to their duck pond, and people get I mean, we know we didn't eat the ducks, but they people gather like it's the miracle at Lourdes or something, and that was just really nutty. But this restaurant had some of the greatest chefs in the world, and we all had this per diem, and there were like 10 of us, Bela and his family, and Sarah, and Ron Cheney, and there were like 10 of us, and we were looking at the menu and said, well, hey, has anybody used their per diem today? We've got $100 a piece. Want to spend $1,000 on dinner? And Bela talked a bit about his father and his wine connoisseurship, and so he did the honors and ordered a whole slew. Probably half the money got spent on some really extraordinary wines, and it was really a memorable night. How much more memorable it would have been to have the founders of the feast there themselves. But I talked to some people who did. Richard Gordon, the producer, the late producer, was an old friend, and he told me about having dinner at a restaurant in New York City, I believe, in the early 50s with Lugosi and his wife Lillian, and there was a floor show, and Lugosi let the wine was flowing very freely, and Lugosi's stories were flowing freely, and there was a costume mishap with one of the showgirls, and the entire front of her costume fell off, just feet away from Lugosi, and he Richard said he spun around like he was spotting the Renfield's bloody finger at the castle, and to have only been there for something like that.
I can't even imagine. Richard Gordon's actually in the cookbook here, sharing anecdotes about Bela in the.
Yeah. Oh, I take everything. Nothing he had to say was apocryphal. He was really there. He really knew him for a long period of time, and just was a wonderful raconteur about Hollywood. He had tried to get the British Board of Film Censors to lift its 30-year embargo on Todd Browning's Freaks, which they had banned, in the 1930s, and he didn't let them know the complete reason for his visit, but met with them, and they said, "And what film is it that you wanted to speak with us about, Mr. Gordon?" And he said, "Well, Todd Browning's Freaks." And the censor lady said, "Mr. Gordon, this meeting has come to an end." And it finally did, get out of its long embargo. But the other closest time I got to getting together with Bela was through another show business personality, the actress Elaine Stritch, who acted in Summerstock with Lugosi on Long Island in the late 1940s. And I had heard about this and didn't know how to get in touch with her. And my next door neighbor was a big musical theater authority. in New York at the time. And I said, how do I get in touch with Elaine Stritch? He said, oh, she's in the book. She'll talk to anybody. Just call her. And I did. And we had this extraordinary talk. And she had wonderful stories about Dracula. She said that he came in full costume and makeup to the very first rehearsal. It probably made sense because, in summer stock, the star comes in, not on a lengthy kind of basis. But she said to me that he loved taking the cast out for dinner, and especially for drinks after the show, and after knocking back several glasses of scotch would become increasingly maudlin. And he said he would put his arm around Elaine and say, Elaine, if it wasn't for Boris Karloff, I would be the king of Hollywood horror. And so almost there, not quite, but I'm getting it, from a horse's mouth, as it were. And her other story that was so terrific about that production was a malfunction, not a costume malfunction, but a wooden stake malfunction. And at the very end, where Lugosi's in his coffin and Van Helsing and Harker have a mallet and a rubber stake, and they're about to dispatch Count Dracula. Harker slipped, and the end of the mallet just went flying off into the wings, and everyone was just stunned. And Van Helsing just ad-libbed, and he said, "Hit him again, Harker." And the audience cracked up for like 5 minutes. And Elaine said that Lugosi was not amused. He didn't like, it probably had to do with the fact that his English was always a little shaky. And he didn't like departures from the script. And it did not put him in a good mood that night at all. But how wonderful. I mean, I started digging into these movies just at the point they were at the very limits of living human memory. And I did get to talk to some extraordinary people, became friends with some as well. And otherwise it is all gone, because people did not, they did not give oral histories. They didn't give career retrospect, interviews, retrospective interviews. And I'm glad more people are doing that now. I think since my book came out, I've had a lot of my readers and fans have gone on to do their own books, and they are making sure they are capturing every possible anecdote and memory of more recent films. So history will go on.
Much like the monsters themselves.
They never die.
Right. Would you like to check it on Facebook? Maybe I can check it on my phone and see if people are asking questions.
Oh, sure. Go ahead.
I bet there's probably a lot of questions people want to know. So let me see here. That's one of the fun things, is kind of interacting with people here. I'm a brand new fan of David Skal's, I'm happy to say. Oh, that's cool.
I'm taking a selfie here. Here we go.
Pardon?
I'm taking a selfie.
Cool. I'm at Whitby every Halloween. You'd love it, Carrie. Oh, gosh. Some people are giving us cooking tips here. David, what is your favorite Bela film?
What is my favorite Bela film? Oh, that's tough because, you know, there are different reasons to, different things to admire. I mean, Dracula is a sentimental favorite just because I've seen it hundreds of times now. I mean, I hate to admit that. But his best, I love Bride of the Monster. And I know it's not him at the height of his powers, but there's just something so mesmerizing, campy, you know, about the film. In terms of his work as an actor, it's got to be Son of Frankenstein, and he's almost unrecognizable, you know, as Igor.
Oh,
But
so
but it shows off what a versatile and amazing technician he was, you know, in terms of acting. And because he made such an indelible impression as Dracula, and that characterization, you know, used his own face and not much makeup, and that was his voice, that forever after, anytime you know, producer would consider him, or an audience would consider going to see him, they would expect Dracula. And so typecasting, you know, can be a blessing and a curse. I remember once I was privileged to be in a class of acting students with Vincent Price as the guest instructor, and the students were all literally just seated at his feet in a circle, and asking him questions. And one student asked him, you know, Mr. Price, don't you resent being typecast as a horror actor? And he said, heavens, no. You're only beginning your careers, you know, in the performing arts, but most actors spend their lives collecting unemployment. And if you're lucky enough to be typecast in something you can do like nobody else can do, thank your lucky stars. You're the luckiest performer in the world. And he never resented or regretted, you know, a single moment of time he spent scaring people on screen.
I love Vincent Price. In fact, after Diana Rigg died recently, I was just rewatching Theater of Blood, and it's so fun to watch him do Shakespeare in that, and watch him kind of just totally.
It is one of my favorites. In fact, I just got a request this week specifically to go on a podcast to talk about Theater of Blood, and it's it's a wicked film. I enjoy it so much. He's a Shakespearean actor who takes his revenge against a society of theater critics by killing them in methods adapted from Shakespeare's plays. And that's all I need to say about it now. Just go enjoy it. If you haven't seen it, you're really in for a treat.
Oh, absolutely. That movie is just so much fun. Let's see if we have any other questions here. Do you know who owns the Clarabeau painting that Bela commissioned?
No, I don't. I think it may have been up for auction in recent years. Probably just Googling Clarabeau painting Bela Lugosi will lead you right to it.
I also know David Sten, Clarabeau's biographer, so I could also ask him. So he might have info on that one. Do you have a monster film pet peeve?
A pet peeve?
Yeah, pet peeve of monster movies. Someone's asking us that.
Oh, I'm not sure. I tend to be very tolerant of anything the genre wants to throw my way. No, my peeve is that I was unable to get through to certain people I really, really would have killed to have been able to interview, before they passed. And the fact that nobody cared enough to track them down when they could. because it's bad enough that half the movies ever made no longer exist.
It kills me.
It's a fragile medium, and film preservation has not been taken seriously until very recent decades, really, and so half the product is gone, and probably even more of the memories, people who were involved in it are gone as well. So,
Monster pet peeve?
my pet peeve is that nobody bothered.
I think my pet peeve is that they tore down the stage where they shot Phantom of the Opera on the Universal lot.
That was just so hideous, a desecration. It was the oldest working soundstage in the world, and that replica of the Paris Opera House and the boxes were reproduced in meticulously in plaster, and it was still, when I was working for Universal, it was still a working stage. They had the opera boxes all covered up, with plastic, but they were still shooting commercials and all kinds of things on the stage 28, and they promised they were going to preserve it, and I don't believe they did. I think they just knocked it to dust. Apparently, they made some kind of a digital record of its details. But that is the kind of thing that really should have been saved by the Motion Picture Academy Museum, that's going to open very soon. Without that, it will have Lugosi's Dracula cape, which is kind of fun, and people will get to see it up front. I'm privileged to have been able to get up close and personal with it. I'm glad nobody was there with a camera, though, because when I tried it on, it looked like one thing on Bela Lugosi at 6'3" or whatever he was, and on 5'7" me, it looked like a collapsed circus tent. But so you learn a lesson. Short guys can't wear capes, sadly.
I hope the ghosts of every single Universal horror monster haunt the person at Universal who made that decision. That's what I hope.
Yes, I would second that, and there are just many people there who, over the years, who just didn't care about the legacy. The studio changed hands, of course, several times after the Laemmles, and one of the first things they did was to get rid of all of their silent film holdings, and just destroy these nitrate prints and negatives. The Phantom of the Opera was very, very lucky to have escaped, because the George Eastman House in New York got wind of it and made sure it took possession of the thing. But they had they had a pristine print of Nosferatu, probably from the original German camera negative, that they had bought to suppress during the negotiations, for the film, because it was a unauthorized adaptation of Dracula, and that seems to be one of the first things to have gone up in flames, or however they destroyed all their nitrate silent properties. And what a waste!
I noticed when I finally got to see Paul Linney's The Last Warning, that also seemed to be the Paris Opera set from Phantom.
I'm sure it was probably in there. I haven't seen it recently. But Conrad Veidt in that film, he is auditioning for Dracula. I'm convinced. It's a amazing performance, and his name was being thrown around around 1929 for the part of Dracula. Universal kept announcing they were going to do it without actually having the rights, which did not put Bram Stoker's widow in a good mood. She never trusted the studio. And even though she finally did, she was made comfortable for the end of her life with the money she made from the book sale in 1931.
Well, this has been absolutely fascinating. I can't thank you enough for joining me today. This has been such an honor to chat with you.
Well, I can't wait to see it again with the food visible, and I'm serious. And let's please do it again. You have one. I'd be happy to join any if you can get any of the Monster Kids, Victoria Price or Sarah Karloff. Or...
I'm gonna ask them. I hope.
Do. Well, I know them both, so please tell them. I'd be happy to shore them up. This is really worth doing. What a fun Sunday afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I think with the pandemic, it's been so rough on so many of us that I'm just trying to do something fun and put it out there for people to enjoy.
Well, it's been great, and bon appetit. And
happy haunting.
You too. It's October's only started. Plenty of time.
Well, thank you so much. And as soon as these come out of the oven, I will be sending you a photo.
Thank you. I'm looking forward to it.
All righty. Well, thank you so much.
Take care now.